I think that, Ori, you need to stop your sharing. Excellent. So now, can you see my screen? Excellent. Remote control is at your ends, Gal.
Thank you very much. So we're at the final stretch. Let's get it rolling. So today, I would like to introduce you to a new way of thinking about vulnerability prioritization. And we will talk about how to harness eBPF to find those CVEs that really matter to you and how we at ARMO implemented it.
Gal, 1 second. Let me try to maybe get into full screen mode. I think there is an issue.
Yeah, it looks
Let's
like
see if that one.
control.
Yeah, 1 second, 1 second. Let's see if resharing again will work. Okay, I think that now it should be fine.
And we'll try.
Go, right? Excellent, Gal, go ahead.
Wait, I still see the first slide. Oh, good. So I'll just introduce myself shortly. So my name is Gal, and I'm a product manager at ARMO for the past year. I'm a tech savvy. Everything that involves technology makes me excited in one way or another. And I'm solutions oriented. I like to look at things. I like to find solutions because, you know, finding issues is always easier. And I like the challenge. I'm a questions asker, if I may say that, because I like to ask questions. Sometimes those questions might be hard to answer at first, but as we move along, I think about the solutions as I ask the questions. And in my free time, I'm a photographer, and I can say that I love the beach, but it's a bit cliche, so I didn't put it in the slide. One thing that I didn't write, and that's not because I want to forget my past. I'm a former DevOps, so I was a DevOps in couple companies for a few years. So I come from the technical side of things. And let's talk some tech. Did it move to the next slide? No.
No, not yet. Let me try to.
Okay, so
okay, now it's just.
I'll try to use.
I'll try to give you remote control again, just in case. Go ahead.
So, we're talking about DevOps practitioners that are being slammed with work. They are being overwhelmed with work, and this work needs to be prioritized. So the long list of work, of tasks needs to be prioritized. And in those tasks, we also have the vulnerabilities, like everyone just understood. So if we go one level deeper, security is shifted left. So there's still more work to be prioritized and done. And today, what we're going to do, we will focus on that long list of vulnerabilities that your vulnerability scanner somehow presented to you. And you need to know how to explain this to the security team, to the CISO, of how you're prioritizing and why you're prioritizing the way you do. So the vulnerability assessment today, the process is starting by discovering the vulnerabilities using different methods. We will touch about it. We will touch it in a minute. You need to assess the criticality, the impact, the effort to fix that vulnerability. You probably create some custom reports to understand your posture, your security posture, and to report to your superiors. And there's the stage of remediating the vulnerabilities, and then, of course, verifying that the fix was successful. Talking about vulnerability scanners, I want to pause for 1 second and ask a question. It's not going to be a poll or anything like that. You probably remember that I like to ask questions. So here it is. What are vulnerability scanners? are they really security tools, or are they just data collectors? I hope to answer this question in a few slides from now. So how does a vulnerability scanner works? So vulnerability scanners, they examine the container images that are used in context of Kubernetes deployments, and they inspect the image contents. They inspect the image contents, including all the operating system packages, the application dependencies, libraries, and such. And comparing those image contents, image contents against well-known vulnerability databases, those scanners identify any known vulnerabilities associated with that image. And the image contents list is called the SBOM. So what is an SBOM? SBOM stands for Software Bill of Materials, and this is a list of all the software components, all the dependencies that are using during building the particular software application or that system. And an SBOM, it actually provides a detailed inventory of all the software components, all the open source libraries, third-party frameworks, all the proprietary code, and so on and so on. And the SBOM concept has gained significant importance in the recent years. It's driven by the need to be increased transparency and increase the accountability in the software supply chain. And it helps organization eventually to identify and, of course, address those vulnerabilities that are found and perform effective risk assessments. So let's take a look at how we are extracting the SBOM today. So it has to be able, the security, the vulnerability scanner has to be able to list the software on the container image itself, which is, of course, extracting the SBOM. And the second step is comparing that SBOM with well-known published databases that are that contain the information for each software package. And the result actually is a list of vulnerabilities that were found for that specific image. So the extraction of the SBOM, it can be done by using different methods. Like I said, it can be used, it can use the package manager or Linux distribution, for instance. And many software development environments and package managers, they maintain detailed information about the dependencies and, of course, their versions. So by integrating with the package manager, the SBOM extraction process, it can generate almost automatically. And this approach is effective basically for projects built like with package managers like NPM, like Maven, like Pip, like Jar, and so on and so forth. And like Oshrat mentioned, like Ori mentioned, we all know that vulnerabilities, also known, of course, as CVEs, are rated by severity, and they range from negligible to critical. And the CVSS score is a standardized method for assessing the severity and impact of vulnerabilities. So I'm not going to go into details again, but like Ori mentioned, there's a calculation including the base score, there's the temporal score, there's the environmental score. And it's important to note that the CVSS score is just one aspect of vulnerability assessment, because the calculation of vulnerabilities is some kind of combination of a few factors. Probably the critical vulnerabilities are probably perceived as posing the highest threat to your organization, but there are also factors like the potential impact of it, the confidentiality, impact the confidentiality, the integrity, the availability of a system, and of course, the exploitability, the ease of exploitability of that vulnerability. So a risk-based approach to vulnerabilities patching is actually a method where we prioritize the patching of vulnerabilities based on the risk they pose to an organization. And this approach takes into account the severity of the vulnerability, the likelihood of it being exploited, and the impact that it would bring if it will be exploited. So the process looks a little like this. You get a list of CVEs, your vulnerability scanners, whatever it is, has outputted to you. you have the order by CVSS, like we talked, and that's the point probably where you get the CVE shock. If you didn't get the CVE shock, you're one of a kind, but probably you already got the CVE shock by that stage. And then you need to start prioritizing. You prioritize probably by the risk-based approach, like we just showed. And after prioritizing, you go on some kind of a wild goose chase where you need to find fixes for those vulnerabilities, if of course there is one. If there's no fix, then you probably need to mitigate the vulnerability somehow. And let's say that there is a fix, you can start working on it. Amazing, right? It's basically amazing that you can start work on something and fix it. But does that fix really impact your security posture? Not necessarily. And that's one thing. So where should we really start when we want to talk about prioritizing vulnerabilities? In this chart, and it's quite similar to what Oshrat showed before, you can see a breakdown of the vulnerabilities according to CVSS, by the way. And as Oshrat also mentioned earlier, what often happens is that teams will tend towards solving the vulnerabilities with the highest CVSS score, which means critical and high, right? And if you look at this and you start calculating, you will get to a point that the risk-based approach still leaves us with around 1,000 high and critical vulnerabilities that needs to be remediated and, of course, verified according to the process. So I'll give you a short, this implies some kind of months of work just for this snapshot of images, and you can't really know that what is the impact that it's making on your security posture. And this is the worst thing. You're going to waste time on issues that don't affect your security posture, and it's just, it's just wasted time. So all of this was a preface to the new best practice that I'm introducing today. And this is the solution to your problem, to the CVE shock. So this new practice is actually rooted in the relevancy of the vulnerabilities to your specific Kubernetes environments. So we propose to look at the intersection of the three circles and deal with those vulnerabilities first. And we are mentioning it since they have the potential to hurt you the most. They are relevant to you, they are fixable, and they are RCE, which means remote code execution. That means can be exploited remotely. So how do we detect if a vulnerability is relevant or not? It's very easy. If a software package is used, then the files it contains are being used by the container. And if a software package is not being used, so the vulnerabilities cannot be exploited, and the package probably can be removed from the SBOM list, and therefore we create the filtered SBOM that I will show you in a minute. So the risk-based approach better explains why you should patch the vulnerabilities in the overlap first, because the source of vulnerabilities with the most chance of becoming an attack vector are the software binaries that are loaded into memory. And this is where ARMO's relevancy feature comes in, because the ones that are relevant, fixable, and RCE, meaning can be exploited from remote, are the ones that can hurt you the most. So afterwards, after fixing the overlap of the three circles in the Venn diagram, you should move on to mitigation. The mitigation of remotely accessible and, of course, relevant, because those are the source of nightmares. There are vulnerabilities that are old packages that don't have a fix, and they can be exploited from remote, and they are loaded into memory. Those are nightmares for security professionals. For mitigation options, you have several. So you should use continuous scanning solutions. You need to find vulnerabilities as fast as you can. You can use, of course, misconfigurations are a common source of vulnerabilities in Kubernetes environments specifically. And it's very important to ensure that all the configuration settings are really properly secured and aligned with the best practices and your company's policies. And of course, this includes configuring pod security context implementing Kubernetes RBAC, using namespaces for separate workloads, and so on and so on. And the defense in depth section actually goes to applying multiple layers of security controls to make it harder for attackers to exploit the vulnerabilities. You will find it harder to move laterally within your Kubernetes environment. And this also includes security profiles, implementing pod security standards, using container sandbox projects, and this will prevent the privileged escalation and the lateral movement in the Kubernetes environment. For network security, you can segment your network. You can implement network protection, network policies, monitor the network activity, of course, enforce everything. And for the endpoint security, I know it seems obvious, but you must maintain inventory of all the endpoints. Make sure that each one of them is equipped with the necessary safeguards, antivirus, firewalls, and so on. So that's the software, update software next. This is where you need to patch. Okay, so this is the relevant and the fixable. This means that it's very important, but not as important because it's not accessible from remote. And we call it, this is a fire you can walk to and not run to. So we recommend you adopt this as your new vulnerabilities prioritization best practice, rather than working your way down the CVSS score, where the impact is not 100% sure, and of a quick comparison between the two. So using the new approach, you get a prioritization automatically, and you don't have to do anything manually. Of course, there's a massive decrease in the number of vulnerabilities that you have to fix. Hopefully, you're not in a CVE shock anymore as opposed to before. And of course, the improvement in security posture is immediate because you know exactly what you're fixing, and you're not just guessing that it could be affecting your environment. So in case you were wondering what happens if we apply the new concept of the Venn diagram that we just saw to the example images that we saw before, our security researchers tested, and we can see a massive reduction of between 75 to 98% of the vulnerabilities that, as a security expert, you need to deal with. And looking at how we're doing that, so this is under the hood of the relevancy functionality in ARMO platform. We added a new agent. We added a new agent to the Kubescape in cluster component, and that's important to say. And it's called Taster. Now, the Taster uses Falco's eBPF libraries. We talked about eBPF, and it uses the eBPF libraries to look at the activity of any container that starts on the node. And when a pod starts on the node, the Taster will watch all the containers that started for a configurable learning period. Our default currently is 2 minutes. This is the configurable learning period for now. And of course, we're storing all that activity aside. Now, during the process of scanning a container, an SBOM is created. We talked about it. So it provides the vulnerability scanner's understanding of exactly which components are installed on the image. So this is something that we already talked about and put aside. And when we scan for vulnerabilities, we also provide the engine with the filtered SBOM. And that includes only the packages that relates to files that were accessed during the learning period. So as I said before, if it's loaded into memory, it's relevant. If it's not loaded, it's not. So this provides us a filtered list of vulnerabilities that are more likely to be relevant for your environment. And now, if you don't mind, Gidi, I would like to share my screen.
Yeah, so 1 second. And you should be able to do so Just let me know and I'll
Okay, I'm
move it here.
trying now, sharing.
Second, yes, I can see it.
You can
Okay,
see your
so-
GitHub.
Great. So GitHub is exactly the way I wanted to start, because with ARMO, we are using Kubescape, which is our open source project. It's CNCF sandbox. And this is what we use in order to get all of our information. You can see it on GitHub. You can go and star it. We have 8,600 stars, waiting for more. And actually, you can use Kubescape as a CLI binary, but you can also go and install the in-cluster components, which are all grouped in a Helm install. Very easy to use. And after you do that, you get to the ARMO platform. Now, ARMO platform is one single pane of glass for.
Sorry, can you zoom out a bit so we can see your whole screen, please?
Zoom out.
No, actually zoom in so we'll see the text.
Okay,
Oh, even better.
better.
I can see it now. Oshrat, do you see it
Are you
properly?
good?
Oshrat?
I'll take it as a yes.
Yeah, it's better. Thanks.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, excellent.
So what we're seeing right here, this is actually the dashboard. I can see all the clusters that I scanned in the past. I can see the trend over time. This is a demo cluster and a demo account. So I see that one dot from the scan that I did. And I see the top 5 failed controls that failed on those clusters. And I'm going to move from vulnerabilities for just a second. We're using controls, which are tests, and they are compliant with different frameworks that we have in the system. We are talking about NSA, we're talking about MITRE, different flavors of CIS. And at the bottom, I can see another table, which is the vulnerabilities risk table. And here I will see all the vulnerabilities calculations that are gathered during the scans. And of course, I see also the top 5 CVEs that were found on my images. So I see the CVE name or ID. I know or don't know if it has a fix, then it says here, and how many images are affected by that specific CVE. So we have in the platform, we have the compliance page, where we see the clusters, we see the total score for that framework, we see the results. We have a cool feature of assisted remediation, so I can go and really fix and see issues within the cluster itself, within the manifest files. So I know where the issue is, I know what to do, I know what the issue is. And this is another part that we have in our system. We have the RBAC visualizer, we have the repository scanning and the registry scanning, so we can shift left, like we said. And we have the vulnerabilities section. And in the vulnerabilities section, I can see right away all the total vulnerabilities that were found on my images. I see the numbers breakdown for fixable, RCE, again, remote code execution, meaning remote accessible, and the number of relevant vulnerabilities. So I'm going to give you one example that I took from before. So I have these 2 pods that I started, the Nginx pod and the Redis pod. And right away, I can see the vulnerabilities breakdown by severity. But this is the relevant, meaning only 9 packages or binaries that has some vulnerability on them were actually loaded into memory during the Redis runtime. So Oshrat before showed something else. I think it was 14 packages, if I'm not mistaken. And this time it's 9. And why is the difference between the two? The difference between the 2 numbers is because my environment runs differently from Oshrat's environment. We're using the same Redis image, but we're running it differently. So if I drill down in, I will see this list of only 5 vulnerabilities that I need to handle. And why there are only 5? Because we are looking at what is fixable, what is relevant. These are filters that we have in the platform. And I don't have any RCE and no remote code execution. So I'm pretty safe on that side. If I had remote code execution, I would add that filter here. According to my company's policy, I need to fix whatever has a fix, whatever is relevant, and let's say critical and high, let's add it. And I'm down to 1 vulnerability in total that I need to fix. I'm down from 185, and we talked about it before. It means a lot of hours of work. We are down to only 1, which is high, relevant, and fixable. So this is the engine of relevancy and how it works on our side in the ARMO platform. And you can get it for each and every one of your workloads. And again, it's dependent on what your workload is running in real time. So your results will never resemble mine because we're running separate things. Back to the slides.
Second. I'm sharing mine. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, just the control.
Excellent, and here you go.
So, summarize. We discussed on the new best practice for prioritizing vulnerabilities. So let's just put it all together right now. You should scan your cluster in order to get the CVEs list. You should filter according to what has a fix, what is relevant, and what is RCE, remote code execution. ARMO does that for you. You should plan to deal with the vulnerabilities in the overlap of the 3 circles first. And of course, because we don't recommend leaving any vulnerabilities unaddressed, there are a few more steps which are for the remaining vulnerabilities that are relevant and fixable. You should either pull a fixed image in case there is one, or you should update the vulnerabilities, the vulnerable binaries. And for vulnerabilities that are relevant and has no fix, you should take other mitigation options. We discussed it before in previous slides. And lastly, you should, of course, patch the remaining vulnerabilities that you can. So for more information, of course, you can contact us at ARMO. You can join the Kubescapes community on the CNCF Slack channel. You can use the GitHub. I see that Oshrat added it in the chat. And of course, you can contact us wherever you see fit. So for conclusion, I hope it's been informative for you. Thank you very much for listening. And if you have questions, it's now or never. And of course, I'm just kidding.
So, first of all, thank you very, very much. And there are a few questions. The first one is by John. So John asked, do you validate or execute the CVEs, or is matching enough to be listed in the list of vulnerabilities?
Can you repeat that?
Yes. Do you validate or execute the CVEs, or is matching enough to be listed in the list of vulnerabilities? So
I'm not sure that I understand, but I'm going to try to answer that. We're using eBPF engine in order to see what's loaded into memory. So we are looking at the binaries. We're creating that list from that eBPF engine. We're not running the binaries ourselves. So whatever runs within your application, you know your application better than us, of course. Then you run your application, and we're looking at what's being loaded into memory. So I hope that answers the question.
So John, if it does, that's great. If not, again, feel free to add to your question or write an explanation in the chat. Tal Tella is asking a really good question, and as a user of Wiz myself, I would connect to that one, though I think that I have some, I have an idea on why or what's the answer to this one. So Tal asks, what is the advantage of yours over Wiz? Just for those that aren't familiar with Wiz is a CNAPP solution. They have CSPMs, they have EBPF, so they can actually look at vulnerabilities in your infrastructure based on detection of files. They take a snapshot and then they pull it all together and realize what's there.
I think you said it. I think you said it best. They're a CNAPP, and they look at your infrastructure. We are Kubernetes experts. We are dealing with KNAPP, and we are working with Kubernetes. That's our expertise.
And Tal, I hope that answers your question. Both of them, by the way, are amazing solutions. No, I mean, not
I can't say anything about, I'm an advocate for ARMO.
But what I'm saying is that each one of them will give you the benefit in different areas. So what you can get with ARMO is not exactly what you get with Wiz, but in Wiz, obviously, there are other things related, again, mostly focused on the infrastructure. Hopefully that answers the question. Besides that one, I saw some in the chat. 1 second, let's see. There are lots of things here. Okay, I see that Oshrat, you did put the GitHub link, so that's not that was already answered. Okay, Nathaniel asks, what if it's loaded into memory indirectly, like virtual alloc, etc.?
Virtual location or some kind of symlink, right? I think that's probably the question.
Yes.
Yeah. So there are ways to deal with that. We are currently working on improving that engine all the time, every day. We have our team of engineers that are working on that. We have some solutions for that. We can talk about it later if you want. We are in the development stage of that particular thing.
Okay. Another one I have here is, why would the company invest in automated security tools in order to resolve manual code or design issues?
Why would the company
would invest in such automated security tools in order to resolve manual code or design issues? So why automation, basically?
Okay, so I think that's a more question. That's a question more for the AppSec, but in general, like Oshrat said, if you need to do something twice, you should automate it. And from my perspective, as long as you automate things, you will work less and you will have more time to innovate. You will have more time to prepare yourself for other days, let's say, because if you are going for the shift left, you're probably, in the agile environment, you can ship the software or the application, you can ship it 3 or 4 times a day, and you want to make sure to get the results. You want to make sure that automations are in place, so you don't have to do that 3 or 4 times a day. And if we're talking about a company with several products in their suite, so we're talking about a lot of work that needs to be done automatically.
And there's another perspective. There's another perspective here as well. Manual work introduces errors, which is why we love CI/CD, right? So if you can automate something, and something as complex as CVEs, because of the sheer numbers, right?
The scale.
Exactly. That I mean, if God had showed us the whole list of the CVEs that came out, we would have been mind-boggled. It would have been like over a page long. I don't know, 50 records a page. We had 183. Would have been 4 pages. At some point, you lose count. Your eyes get crossed. You make a mistake, And the idea is that we want to avoid these mistakes. So that's why we want to automate that as well. Makes life easier, faster, and also easier to fix, because even if our automation has a mistake, we fix it in one place and we don't make all sorts of weird human errors.
So in a way, I mean, in front of me, I see a couple, I mean, I see all the questions, and basically I see two questions that we already answered, and like any other good Jew, I would answer a question with a question. So Nathaniel asked before, that's interesting, going back to that one, because we said it might, I mean, Gal's presentation and demo would probably answer this question, and I think that the question I just read basically answered that one. So Nathaniel, you asked before, we had lots of new security issues when we migrate from monolith to microservice on AKS. You mentioned even 10K plus issues. How would you prioritize this amount of issues across multiple clusters and lots of namespaces and containers? Well, I think that the last question that we just read, which is why would the company invest in automated security rather than manual work? Starting from that one, in order to try to handle 10K plus issues. And again, eventually you might need to get to all those 10Ks. But the question is, what should be the 100 that you would handle tomorrow morning, and whether some of those can be fully automated and fixing it really, really fast and easy, as Gal presented.
And of course, you know, accumulating all the information from, you said it yourself, 10K, I think it's resources, from 10K resources from different clusters, from different namespaces, you get everything in one table. And it's not a very long one table, because it's prioritized, it's relevant. So I think that answers the question.
Yeah. So again, in the meetup, we don't usually collect leads. That's not the concept of the meetup. But Nathaniel just said that he would like to do a POC. So again, Nathaniel, I think the guys from ARMO will be in touch with you later on. And again, if our meetup just help you resolve a big issue or a strategic issue in your organization, that would be our small donation to a better and more secure world. Ron asks, how do you calculate an actual exploit's likelihood or probabilistic score, if any?
If you would do that by the risk-based approach, you would have to do it probably manual, because you don't have a way to talk about the likelihood of exploitability. But if we're talking about the new approach, which is using the relevancy, then we are doing that for you, because again, we are looking at what's being loaded into memory. If it's being loaded into memory, there's a higher chance for exploitability. If it's not loaded into memory, there's a lower chance of exploitability for that vulnerability.
Excellent. And another question that we see here is, when eventually the same or more effort goes into mitigating the false positive CVEs, and where is the benefit?
When
eventually the same or more effort goes into mitigating the false positive CVEs, and where is the benefit?
So if you go to mitigation, I think there's a lot more, not a lot, but there's more work to be done, because it needs to be, you need to think about it, you need to understand how it's going to affect your environment, you need to find the right solution, because you probably have a few solutions. But you should start with fixing what's relevant, fixable, and RCE, because it's important because it's relevant. It's dangerous because it's RCE, remote code execution, meaning remote accessible, and it has a fix. So you can dive right in, you can fix that, and then you can free your other time to go and search or mitigate other vulnerabilities. So I think that the new approach, the new best approach that we are suggesting is actually taking you through the entire process. And we're not talking about how much time you're going to invest in each step, but how much time you're going to save by not fixing things that are not relevant and not improving your security posture.
Thanks for that one. So I think that's all for now from question perspective. Again, unless we or Oshrat, I mean, if you have some questions on your, but okay, 1 second, I do see something that pop up in the chat. Oh, Ron say thanks. Excellent. So again, if you have no other questions, a couple of things, last couple of words from us, the meetup orchestrators. So thanks everyone for being with us for even more than 2 hours this evening. Have an amazing weekend for those that are living outside of Israel. Have one more day of work, but then have an amazing weekend. Again, as we mentioned before, it was recorded. We will upload it. Same for the presentations. In the chat, before we are wrapping up and closing, you can actually copy those links that have been shared, the GitHub, the cheat sheet of OWASP, and a few others. Lior also put the link to a Google form. If you are a member of ISACA or IC Square, and you would like to be to those hours be reported as CPEs, please fill in the form. We are happy to assist in this manner. Again, join our LinkedIn meetup group. You can use that QR code here, or simply Google us or search us on LinkedIn. Use that link below, or reach out to us. And one more and very interesting thing that we are going to do. Specifically this, one second. There is one more question. Okay, no, actually, Gautam said it was such a pleasure to catch whatever I could on this session, and above all, a true pleasure to see you all. Thanks, Gautam, and thank you for joining us. So one last thing, this, again, we are doing a lot of meetups, and I think that was one of the most vivid, interactive ones. Again, all of them are amazing, but I don't know, it felt like many of the attendees in this case had lots of questions, lots of things to say, and we really appreciate it. If you want to present in one of our next meetups, and we have lots of them, I mean, one coming not even in a month time, I think in 10, 15 days time or something like this. So if you want to present in our meetups, please reach out to us via the LinkedIn group, reach out to Leo, reach out to myself, and we will be happy to do it together with you. We will send it also in our next email. So stay tuned, look at the email. With the recording, you will also see a form, and we'll be in touch with you and figure out together what should be the topic of your choice to present, again, based on your experience and what you can contribute to the community. Thank you, everyone, and have an amazing weekend.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.